Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you with us today on the Energy Suite podcast. My name is Rex Halbeisen. I'm your host. Some people call me Rex, that energy guy, because when it comes to energy, I'm into everything. And today I have a fun monologue to share with you, a fun story that actually is very interesting. It's a story that's more than 100 and, let's see, 126 years old, and it has parallels to what's happening today. But before we get into that story, I want to thank our partners in the show and a primary partner and sponsor that helped make this the entire podcast available, and that's our friends at No Pay Now. No Pay Now is an excellent tool to help people unlock the equity in their homes and use it to not only pay off bills, but to completely electrify their homes and get energy independent. AI is eating the electricity that's been meant for your homes, and you need to do something about it because their grid's not going to get any better and prices are never going to go down. So I recommend that you pop on over to No Pay Now, that's nopaynow.com. Check out their home equity investment product, and it is a great financing vehicle that essentially you can completely get energy independent, protect yourself from AI, and have no payments. So great stuff. Good friends over there. Please connect with our friends Judson and Jim, the founders over there. Two fantastic folks. All right. So today, let's get on with our story here today, because I think people will find it fascinating, and especially people here in Colorado, because this is based here. So I want to talk a little bit about, and what this story is that entails is essentially what was going on with EVs and battery storage clear back at the turn of the century. Most people don't know this, but back in the turn of the century, there were actually more electrical vehicles on the roads than there were combustion engines. So this is a predates Henry Ford and some of the things, even though there were combustion engines. But let's take a quick step back for just one hot moment. The first electric vehicles, which were mostly like a cart, came out in the late 1860s. And our friends over in Germany were doing quite a bit, BMW or what would become BMW, Mercedes-Benz. And then also here in the United States, there was a lot of people who were working on electrical vehicles. It wasn't until the late 1870s that actually cars, as you would define them, came into the marketplace. Now, by defining them cars, these were things that could carry passengers or a truck or something of that nature. So they were around. But as I mentioned before, at the turn of the century, 1900, there were more electrical vehicles on the roads than there were combustion engines. And there's a rich history that's associated to Colorado. Now, just like it is currently, range anxiety, charging station availabilities, and this massive race to build a better battery. It was going on just at the back of the turn of the century, just like it is today. Well, it sounds like it's just a today problem, but this story goes clear back 126 years, and it happened right here in Denver, this specific version. There was a gentleman by the name of Oliver Parker Fritchle, which he was a Serbian chemist and an electrical engineer that came to Colorado in 1899. He sought out to come to America to seek out his fame and fortune. Now, he and Nikola Tesla were in Colorado at the same time. Fritchle was in Denver and Tesla was in Colorado Springs, and there's no evidence that they ever crossed paths or met, but things were happening. It just wasn't the same one or two people thinking of these things. There was a lot going on in renewable energies and greener technology. So Nikola Tesla's time in Colorado Springs, where he was doing research here, was fairly brief. He was here from 1899 through the end of 1900. So back to Fritchle. He started out repairing batteries. Again, he was an electrical engineer and a chemist. And so he was repairing batteries for the early electric cars. And he quickly decided he could build a better one himself, like a lot of entrepreneurs, maybe even a parallel to a guy named Elon Musk. Now, he patented his first battery in 1903 and founded the Fritchle Electric Storage Battery Company right here in Denver, right off of Colfax Avenue, the main drag in Colorado, what has been for almost coming up on a century and a half. And eventually, he did what great engineers do. He looked at everything and he looked at the whole machine and he said, I can build the entire machine myself, or the EV. So his first car was made available in 1905. And it was much like the Model T, shaped very similar. And it came in any color you wanted as long as it was black, just like Henry Ford. By 1908, a Fitchell factory was opened up on Colfax Avenue in the building he called the 100-mile Fritchel facility. 100 miles on a single overnight charge. Now, he built almost everything in-house. The batteries, the motors, the bodies. He framed his cars in a laminated ash so they would be flex in a collision and bounce back into shape. Can you imagine that? Department of Transportation standards with a laminated ash frame. But anyway, the critics said that there was no way he was ever going to get to 100 miles. And in fact, across the EV industry, 100 miles was just a barrier. People didn't think that could be broken. Well, Fitchell's answer was, I'll prove it. And he proved it publicly. And his EV was the first EV battery that broke the 100-mile range distance. In 1908, he drove one of his stock models, so nothing that was gussied up. He drove a stock Fritchel 1,800 miles from Lincoln, Nebraska to New York City. Now, there was no internet highway system at this time, so this was over dirt roads, wagon ruts, and in some stretches, no roads at all. And so you kind of think about that, it's rather remarkable. It took him 20 days. He had no breakdowns and he only had one flat tire. But to charge the vehicle, there was the issue of charging stations, and he actually had to go to power plants that existed at the time to charge his car overnight. Sound familiar? Have to stop and find a charging station. Well, the trip was successful, but because he had to go to these charging stations to charge the car, that added complexities to the journey because he was kind of zigzagging around to get to the East Coast because he had to stop at electric generation companies. Can you imagine that if with your EV today, if you had to drive up to the utility company to charge it? So that made the journey a little complicated, and he decided to put the car on a rail car and ship it back to Denver when he had finished this somewhat of a promotional stunt. Well, 4 years later, the Denver company had a showroom on Fifth Avenue in New York City, and his product was aimed at wealthier customers. He had dealerships in Los Angeles and Salt Lake City and a few others. Kind of rough to document this because some of the company records were lost in a small fire. But he had set out to put together an East Coast manufacturing facility in Bridgeport, Connecticut. But that plan never really panned out because things started to change. Now, EVs, kind of like today, were mostly affordable by the wealthy, and that's come down a lot in current times. But even the most crazy, influential people, like Denver's most famous resident, the unsinkable Molly Brown, drove a Fitchel. Now, Fritchel was an entrepreneur. He didn't just sell cars. He sold an ecosystem. A charging station was downtown Denver, full service maintenance on the vehicles because nobody else was going to be able to fix them. And he even had valet delivery and overnight rechargings for his customers. So he would send a runner to go pick up a car, get it charged, and bring it back. Department store fleets ran his electric delivery trucks. Gosh, think of that. That's kind of what's happening today with electric trucks. And he charged a fee that was an estimated 3 cents per package. So he was a pretty smart guy. Not only was he building cars, he put together the maintenance systems, the infrastructure, and then started to doing deliveries with them at the same time. Well, it really came down to an ecosystem. Like I said, charging infrastructure safe, infrastructures, sit places, service plans, fleet economics. He wasn't just 100 years ahead of his time. He was the time. The rest of the world just looked at him in awe. So it was some interesting times that happened back then. So a lot of like when you get on any social media or websites today, that's all you hear is about the dynamic business models and the technology and the advancements. So what happened? Well, pretty simple. Henry Ford happened. The assembly line crushed prices and brought the prices down so the average American household, middle and upper class, could start to afford the Model T. And then a huge one most people don't understand, the electric self-starter erased the hand crank. This was pivotal. So back then, remember, we talked about it. There weren't highways everywhere. There were very, very few paved, and most of them were brick roads. So you were driving these vehicles out in the mud and in the dirt and the dust. Nobody wanted to get down on their hands and knees and crank that crank to get it started. So when the electric starter came along, it made a huge jump in the adoption of combustion-based engines. Well, the last nail in the coffin was cheap gasoline. So the Standard Oil Company, when they came out, made gasoline available and very cheap. That was kind of the nail in the coffin for EVs in that era. So after roughly 500 vehicles that he had manufactured, Fitchel closed his plant in 1917. Now, today, his factory is actually a very noticeable landmark here in the Denver metropolitan area. If you're from here, you'll know, and if you visit, you should stop by. His factory still exists, the building does, at Colfax and Clarkston, and is the Fillmore Auditorium. So if you like music, there are tons of bands that go and play at the Fillmore. It's an iconic spot in Denver, but I'm going to guess that 99% of the people who go to the Fillmore have no idea that America's best electric car was once built inside. But here's part of the story most people don't know. People kind of think that his time in energy ended then. Well, he didn't quit energy. He pivoted. In 1918, and between 1918 and 1923, his company built energy wind-powered electric plants across 20 states and internationally overseas, mostly in Europe. So he was taking farmers' wind mills and turning them into electric plants. How cool is that? So think about that. Batteries, electric vehicles, wind generation, one company, one Colorado company, more than 126 years ago. So when you stop and think about it, the technology was never the problem. The market just wasn't ready. It wasn't the time for the economics. Well, today it is. Now the market's ready. So more than 120 years later, there's another Colorado company that picked up the torch, not with one technology, but 13 and counting. And we've unified that three pillars of technology: conservation, efficiency, and generation. And that one company is the Energy Suite, and that's what I lead. The Energy Suite exists because Oliver Fritchle was right. Energy independence isn't a someday idea. It's an engineering decision, it's a business model, and it's a financial model now. He proved it with 100 miles and only one flat tire. Now we're starting to prove it across the US and Canada. The Energy Suite, everything energy in one place. So if you're ready to move forward and get energy independence, make it so you're no longer dependent on any utility company, protect yourself from AI, and all of the electricity that's being zapped in that direction. Protect yourself from price increases. Get in touch with us. We have a network of professional partners and installers across the United States and into Canada, and they can work with you to find out the exact needs of your particular home and help you gain these phases of energy independence. It's here. It's today. I've proven it myself. So take the time to stop by theenergysuite.com. Take a look at that. We're excited about our new app that's about to be released in the US and Canada, and it looks like the Philippines also. So there's some exciting things that are going on. So I thought I'd share that story today. I think it's really cool because the ideas that we're working through now and the execution of them aren't new. We're just perfecting them. And we are thankful to guys like Oliver Fitchle who contributed to the story. So that's the story today. Wanted to share that with you. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We have listeners all across the globe in 17 different countries, and we're thankful to have you with us. We look forward to lots of great new announcements that are coming with new technology solutions, new relationships with research institutions and universities. There's a lot going on. So stop by the website, theenergysuite.com. And until next time, I'll say what I always say. Thanks, and make it a great day.